people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. We are knocking on the door of the election. We have 2 days left, 2 nights to go basically until the 2024 election will be taking place, which means that we kind of have a lot to cover. Now, I don't have like this monologue that I'm going to go on. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of super chats in the mix. We'll get a lot of people in the mix as well. Just kind of get to the data that we have. I mean, we could discuss some of it. We've got not a lot of new early vote data, but the data that we've covered at length does look good. But still, we have a lot to cover. We have a lot to get to, and make sure you guys like the stream. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys hit that bell for notifications. So we're going to get started right now. If you have any super chats, feel free to send them in. But guys, we have 2 days to go. Everybody needs to vote. I'll say that. Everybody needs to make a plan to vote, and they need to get out to the polls and like actually do it. Like there's no exceptions, because we can't have one person staying home. And everybody that you know, because I know a lot of people here in chat, they're early voters. I get it. A lot of people are like the type of people that like to do things ahead of time because they're very hyper political here, more so than other people. But there's a lot of people out there who aren't like that. You know, you're banking your votes. That's good. It's awesome. But there's a lot of people who aren't banking their votes, and it's okay so long as they actually show up on election day. But they're going to need to show up on election day. They're going to need to do it, or it's going to be all for nothing. So people need to make sure that they end up getting out and voting. Like that's pretty much it. And for people out there, I kind of wanted to ask this question, because people tend to be voting early. But what about the people that are like a little bit less political but are voting for Trump that you know? Are they voting early? So I kind of wanted to put out that poll to see. Are the Trump supporting acquaintances, we could say that, acquaintances, you know, voting on election day or early? And be honest, we want a good sample here, because I see what it's like when I put the early sample versus the election day. But I kind of wanted to see what it was. What it's like your parents, your family, your siblings, your whatever, your acquaintances, how are they voting? Because I kind of wanted to see that, because now it's a little bit more election day, which again is a little bit different than what we've seen before. Because usually it's like everyone's front loading, everyone's going early. Now it's a little bit of a mixed bag, which is interesting to say the least. But we have a lot of super chats to get to. I kind of wanted to touch base on some of the polling, because Donald Trump still leads. Has he ever led? Has he ever led before? In an election year past July, no, he has not. Now he's up now. Do you think the national polling is going to be off by like 5 points? Do you think it'd be off like by 15, which is what the Seltzer poll would have it at? That's called a suppression poll. I don't care what her track record is. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of super chats asking about it. I don't care what her track record is. If you put out that poll, you're just blowing it. I'm sorry. You're just flushing it down the drain. And any ounce of credibility. Now, maybe you'll put out a poll next cycle and it'll be dead on accurate again. But that poll's going to miss by 10 on a bad night for Trump. Like, everybody knows it. Emerson, Trump plus 10 in Iowa. Other polls, Trump plus 8. Trump plus double digits in some other polls a few months ago. But Harris plus 3. You think all the... They think all the corn farmers and the, I don't know, they think the entire rural Great Plains in Iowa, which there's a lot of room to grow. It's not like Nebraska, where people are just dying out in the rurals, which is kind of why you could say Nebraska might be moving a little bit to the left this year. Same thing with Kansas. Kansas has been moving to the left as the urban cores are growing in Johnson County and Omaha. But the rural areas, you know, they're kind of just like dying out. They're stagnant. They're maxed out for Republicans, different demography. Iowa's not like that. And you think they're going to vote for Kamala Harris, of all people? Kamala Harris. She's going to get Obama 2012 margins. Give me a break. Like, just get out the door. Get out of here. Seriously, these people. Like, the left has gotten this, like, I guess you would say, mandate because of it, to act insufferable. They've gotten this mandate to act like crazy. They're already crazy people, but they've gotten this mandate to act like just full lunacy. Steam ahead. They'll be off by 10, even if, Harris does narrowly find a way to win, which there's many pathways. You could argue one pathway, but that's more than enough. It's like, of course, they're going to take it and run with it. They're going to take it and run with it and say, oh, look, we were right. They will talk about how it was, it was like off by 11, but, technically if the state moved left by 0.1, it's right in terms of the direction. That's not how this works. You can do the opposite for Emerson, which is a more plausible result, by the way. Just want to throw that out there. Every national poll is tied. Do these people think New York is going to move right by 15, but Pennsylvania is going to stagnate? That's not how it works. That's never how it's worked, ever. They don't understand electoral dynamics. They don't understand demography. These people are suffering from the midterm brain rot. They will never get out of it. They think the polling that we saw there mitigates any past misses in polling. They believe that every state is going to operate under their own little environments this year with, vastly different swings all over the place. They think Dobbs is the number 2, if not the number 1 issue for independent, low prop, and undecided voters. They think 20% of Republicans are going to vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, folks, it's not going to happen. She can win. But when you say stupid things like this, it just flies in the face of any credibility. It flies in the face of any possible credibility that anybody could have in that situation. There's no way around it. They can cope. They can dig their own holes, which is what they've been digging when some of these polls they cling to. They call other people all sorts of names. But in reality, look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. The unbiased people. They say unbiased. The election mafia. We've seen it before. We've seen it again. They are always trying to go out there. The final stretch. Usually they throw everything they can at Trump and the media. The final stretch, the media will pivot away from persuasive talking points to clinging to, oh, this can't happen. We even had CNN, or was it ABC? It was some analyst from the election mafia went on some network and they said that the polls were so in favor of a Biden victory that if Donald Trump won, they claimed he would win in a rigged election. That they used that term. They were the ones using the term. They were the ones that were claiming that until Donald Trump, it's a neck and neck race, all this stuff going down, and then they say, oh no, he has no standing. He's the one that's the threat to democracy. When they were literally priming for it, if 20,000 votes just flipped across 3 states, they would have been the ones saying threat to democracy. They would have been the ones filing lawsuits. They probably would have won. They probably would have overturned the election because we understand how the establishment works, which is why people need to get off their ass and vote. Too big, yeah, exactly, too big to rig. That's how it's got to be. Get off your ass and vote. We know what these people do. They don't care. They're shameless. They will go out there and they will try. Even if Donald Trump wins in a fair election, they're going to try to throw out our ballots, and they'll claim that we try to do it to theirs, even though under past election law pretenses before the election of 2020, those ballots would have been thrown out. Now, thankfully, you have an RNC that's worth a damn now. You didn't have one back then. People need to get out and vote. People need to get the hell out and vote. Any demoralization nonsense won't be tolerated by me or by anybody else. We have enough people to do it. But, some of these pollsters, it's like it does beg the question, were you kind of backed into a corner about this? Were you? And did you cave and do that? Because it doesn't make sense. You are apparently supposed to be the best pollster in the country. You don't put out a poll that somehow has a Biden +3 recall sample in a state that Donald Trump won by 10 or by 8 percentage points. You don't do that. It flies in the face of just reality. Unless you believe all these Trump people are just going to sit home and the number one issue is democracy. It's like they interviewed a Starbucks in San Francisco. Those were the independents they polled. Not how it works. Not how it works at all. So we have a few days to go, mainly just 2. We have tomorrow, and then we have election day. Then we'll be doing our election night live stream. We have predictions that will be dropped. We'll do a final down ballot. We'll do a regular prediction. But we're going to get to super chats. We're going to go over potentially some places on the map to analyze. What are we looking for? What's going to happen on Tuesday? why people shouldn't panic at certain things, why they shouldn't, gleefully celebrate about other things. We understand. Jared the American says, voted on Saturday. Everybody get out and vote. Daniel Walker says, I'm worried Kamala's surging. Iowa and Ohio's in play. I'm assuming you're operating in good faith here, but that's not true. Can Kamala win? Yes. Is she going to win Ohio? No. Is Iowa in play? Absolutely not. Everybody knows it. Why isn't she in Iowa, by the way? If the Seltzer poll is even within 6, why has she never gone to Iowa? Why has she never campaigned in Iowa? Why is she going to Pennsylvania so much in the final stretch? She could, if she wins Iowa, she would shut down so many pathways to 270 electoral votes. If Iowa's close, Florida's probably close. Texas is close. South Carolina's close. Alaska's close. Why isn't she going to those places? If there's really this hidden landslide for Kamala Harris, why is it not even showing up in Morning Compost? Why is it not showing up in Ipsos or Reuters or ABC, which they're all putting out like Harris by 3? Why is the most accurate pollster by popular vote in 2020 and 2022 showing Trump winning the popular vote? I'm not saying he's going to. I think that gold standards on both sides are very fallible. I really do. They're not exactly 100% accurate. You can't take it as gospel. This woman, Ann Selzer, she's not a god. She's not incapable of missing. She's missed many times in the past. At a minimum, she got a bad sample. At a minimum. At a maximum, maybe something else is going on here. What exactly is going on, I don't know. But Democrats are using this to, I guess you would say, just galvanize their base, boost momentum. It's a psyop, essentially. Even if Selzer herself is not doing anything wrong intentionally, it's still a psyop because it's used as a psyop. Because these experts in the media, the election mafia, deep down, they know the poll's garbage. They know at least the sample's garbage, but they're still going to push it to kind of craft this narrative that Kamala Harris is like the main front runner. They want people to be demoralized, so they sit this election out, so they stay home. That's what it's about, because they know they're not convincing anybody. They know it's a close race nationally, which means Donald Trump does have the upper hand. So they're trying to make sure that a lot of the turnout that we see ends up getting suppressed. That's pretty much all it is. It's about suppressing the turnout. We cannot allow the turnout to be suppressed. We can't do it. We just can't. It's not acceptable. People need to get the hell out and vote. There's people on the right that will spread psyops by accident, mainly in good faith, because people on the left have, they're preying on them to make sure that they do, to continue the cycle of demoralization, because they know they can't, do stuff at the ballot box like it's 2020. They don't have that. They don't have the manpower. They don't have that ballot count. They can't exactly do it the same way. So now they have to do things the other way by keeping people away from the polls. And that's another problem. And it's mainly just through demoralization, ops like that. And then they're going to use polls like the Seltzer poll, and they're going to run with them as gospel. Now, she has a good track record. I don't care. Every cycle, there's a poll with a pristine track record that is almost infallible, that collapses. They collapse instantly. Look at St. Anselm or whatever you call that out of New Hampshire. Never wrong ever. They have Don Bolduc winning a race he loses by 9. It happens. It does. Maybe it's not intentional. Maybe it is intentional. Regardless, it's like Iowa's not in play. I'll say that. Now, Wisconsin, is that in play? Yes. Is Michigan in play? Pennsylvania, they're all in play. I'm beginning to believe that Arizona is probably going to go for Trump, and so is Georgia, and probably North Carolina. The reason why Trump is in the last 2 of those states lately is because he understands if you win North Carolina, if you win Georgia, and if you win Pennsylvania, you cannot lose if you sweep those states if you're Donald Trump. You cannot lose if you get to 270. Kamala Harris, she was in Michigan for 1 rally, and that was it. That was it. She'll be in Pennsylvania 3 times tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. Donald Trump will be there twice. But either way, it's like, folks, I just see so many bad takes. It's exhausting. And a lot of people feel that way, but I hope they're not exhausted to the point where they go vote. I hope they vote. That's the main thing. So long as they vote, you can be exhausted. It's okay to be exhausted. It's going to be a fun ride. It's definitely been a fun ride, not just the past year covering this, the past 4 years, the past 6 years, and it's been great. Now, hopefully we can go out there and get that W, because that's what matters. It's going to be a close race. This is not a cakewalk. This is not a lights out, and I hope it is at the end of the day, but you can't have that mindset. But it is a very, very winnable election at this point. The fundamentals favor Trump. The people just need to show up. If they show up, he's going to win. If they don't show up, he's not going to win. And everybody knows it. So we'll see what happens. We've got 4 rallies tomorrow. We've got a lot of super chats. We're going to go directly to Gerald Armstrong saying, are you concerned the rise of early voting might cannibalize the election day voting? I'm not particularly concerned about that. It is true that people that voted on election day in 2020 on the right, a good chunk of them are choosing to vote early, which is fine. You'd rather bank those votes anyways because you don't know what's going to happen. Is that technically cannibalization, if you want to say so? Now, when you look at the lower propensity voters or voters who did not vote in 2020, but who are voting early now, Republicans are on the upswing. But for the Democrat side, they're cannibalizing more of a percentage of their election day or just 2020 voters who are always going to vote in every presidential election, every midterm. They are cannibalizing them as well. And that's another thing to take into consideration. So it's not like it's not a done deal. But it's not like this cannibalization thing is anything more than an overblown cope. And we did it. We did it. It was wrong when we did it. It's wrong when they do it. You'd rather be the party banking early votes because the party banking the early votes usually is the party with the upper hand. Even states where Republicans have done it in 2020 and 2022, they usually do a lot better. Usually. There are exceptions, but they usually do a lot better. Like even California, Republicans have been making gains in California when they've actually been using like the ballot harvesting tactics the left used when they've been using the, election system, which I think is completely ripe with potential for shenanigans and all this sort of stuff. We get that. But also when Republicans use it and try to take advantage of a system the way the left does, maybe, without some of the past aforementioned shenanigans, it's like, yeah, they do better. They usually do better. Ethan and Braden Productions says, all aboard the Trump train. We got 2 days. One more stop. Sam Godwin for $50. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Andrew Mortensen says, Rep, thank you for it all. It's been one hell of a ride, guys. Let's bring it home on Tuesday. The final ride, and we're going to win MAGA. Well, you have to hope for that. You absolutely do. We got to make it happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I don't want to sound like it's like a dooming thing. I'm just saying that this is like the crunch time, and people can't be taking this thing for granted, because if they do, then, it's going to be a disaster. Look, you have to look at it this way. We have a golden opportunity to take advantage of it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we lose the election, it's, 4 more years down the path of destruction. If you win the election, you get to go off of this, you take the fork in the road that's the path to prosperity. When Harris says, we're not going back, what does she mean? She means we're not going back to that golden age. She wants to move the country past Trumpism, transform it radically into something far different than it was before. They're trying to do some of this moderate window dressing, but they've kind of blown their cover lately because they know they're losing. So it's like a Hail Mary attempt. They're trying to seem like, Trump is evil. They're doing the unhinged rhetoric. And the question is, are enough people going to buy it? That's another thing. And in terms of who's going to outrun who, you can kind of tell what the story of the night is. And that goes for a Trump win or a Trump loss. If Trump does fall short, but down ballot Republicans overperform him, it's probably because that fear-mongering rhetoric from the media, which is election interference, by the way, one way or another, decided to kick in. Now, if Trump outruns down ballot Republicans, maybe you could point to something like Dobbs, because Donald Trump seems to be more of a, he's not somebody that has this track record of being like these abortion hardliners on the topic. But again, I don't think that that's going to be the main story of the night. I think, again, if you look at the top issues, the economy, the border, they matter more to a lot of people. Trump's base is fired up in the early vote. There's still a lot of vote left for Republicans to milk. The question is what happens in the Rust Belt states, and there's a lot of uncertainty, but I have a suspicion that if you're doing better in the early vote in Pennsylvania, and those like wow counties in Wisconsin are through the roof in turnout, you're probably in a good spot. You just have to bring it home. So we got to bring it home. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, I have mixed feelings. I'm excited but anxious. I know what the stats are, but I have PTSD from 2020. I know they fixed election issues, but I can't control my anxiety. Well, I'd say relax. I'd say, just spend the next couple days, if you can, relaxing. Try not to think about it. Come back here at about 5:30 p.m. Central or Eastern time, and we will be live. We will be covering it. We will be breaking down all of the data. It's gonna be a fun ride for sure. Hopefully, at the end of the night, it will be a fun ride. Hopefully, it ends more fun than it begins, but we'll see. Gerald Armstrong says, in fairness, I voted early, but I usually vote on election day. Well, same here, but the main takeaway is that when it comes down to the early vote, people are not necessarily only cannibalizing. Because if it's only cannibalizing, then you could say it's a problem. But because they're turning out a lot of low propensity voters to vote early, and they're doing it at a higher rate than the Democrats are doing it, that is a very good sign for Donald Trump. Very good sign. Tucker Corngay says, have you seen people close to you switching to early voting? Mainly just like an immediate family, but not in entirety. A lot of them voted early before anyways, or at least absentee. RZ410 says, can you walk us through what election night will look if things are going well? What will be the good signs, or when will we know a win is likely? So we have the map here from the New York Times. Now, this is the 2020 map, of course. You can take the results with a little bit of a grain of salt. But the first places that will come in on election night, Indiana, Kentucky. And we know a few counties that we can use as indicators to say, okay, how well is Trump doing among white working class voters, which instantly could possibly throw the Seltzer poll in the garbage. Now, granted, Indiana is not Iowa, but if rural Indiana is showing shifts to the right, you're probably not going to see 15-point shifts to the left in Iowa. I think everybody can understand that. So we will have indicators early on, but also Florida. And this is another thing, because Florida starts reporting at 7 a lot of votes. Duval County, because Florida is not an indicator, but Duval County does track with Georgia. If Trump flips back Duval County, he probably has a good shot in Georgia, just because of the demography of Duval is very similar to the demography of the state of Georgia at large. But Georgia actually will be reporting their votes relatively quickly this year. So, and again, it's going to be a blue mirage from what I hear, just like it is in Florida. So the early vote, the mail-in vote, that gets counted first. Then the election day vote, they should count relatively quickly in the state of Georgia. We will be able to tell what's going on there. North Carolina, a similar thing, but they count a little bit slower. But either way, we should get good intel out of Georgia, North Carolina. Probably by around, I guess you would say, like 9 o'clock, we should probably know the winner of both of those states. We'll have very preliminary data out of Pennsylvania, out of Michigan. Wisconsin will close at 9. So probably by 9 or 10, we're going to have a little bit of a vibe check on what the Rust Belt's going to look like. And from there, we'll probably be able to deduce who the overwhelming favorite is. Obviously, if Donald Trump is going to be underperforming expectations in Georgia or North Carolina, might not be a good night for him. But again, like I said, a lot of things can happen. Definitely Georgia and North Carolina are going to have blue mirages. The question is it going to be enough? But if Trump looks to be poised to take the lead in Georgia or North Carolina, gets those states, and is actually outperforming some of the counties that are like fully in Pennsylvania, like Eastern Pennsylvania, it's like, okay, now we have our benchmark. Now we know what's going on. Donald Trump is in a great position at that point to win the election. So we have really yet to see what's going to happen. We have 2 days left. Really very few early voting. I think that pretty much all states are closed. I could be wrong. There might be a state or two that has in-person early voting tomorrow. Make sure you check with your state secretary of state website. But a lot of states I know have closed it. And then the following day, will be election day, where everybody can go vote. I'm sure a lot of people that have like requested an early ballot, they're going to be dropping off those ballots too in places like Arizona, places like Nevada. Those places also do tend to have those ballots end up being a little bit more Republican, at least for like the late drop-offs, the late mail that gets counted. But also, like I said, Ohio will come in very blue. Missouri and Kansas will come in very blue. Mississippi typically comes in blue. Virginia comes in very red. Don't be alarmed. Don't freak out at the other results. Virginia's a red mirage. Rhode Island is like a really big red mirage. Maybe not as much as 2020, but we'll see. So just kind of a rundown. Arizona definitely comes in very blue, gets redder as the night goes on. But with the early voting this year looking as red as it looks, if Donald Trump is like within striking distance and he has a very good showing on election day, that could be a very good thing out of Arizona for Donald Trump for sure. So that's kind of the answer to the question. Johnny Heartdog says, don't doom. Olivia Williams says, why didn't Republicans invest in the Delaware Congress race? I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe because they think that having somebody like that represent the Democrats is going to be like another punching bag for them, so they don't want to touch it. I don't know. William Furr says, thoughts in Colorado. Early voting shows 28 Republican, 29 Dem. Well, the unaffiliateds are very, very liberal out of Colorado. It could move right by a point or two, but I really don't have any hopes out of Colorado. I really don't. Cell673 says, would you be worried if it was like Trump plus 6? Honestly, probably a little bit more so, because when you release a poll that just is that flawed and that ridiculous, it's like I'm going to dismiss the poll. It doesn't matter what source it comes from. The poll is not going to age well. I'm not going to allow myself to be gaslit by this. Now, if it's like a Trump plus 6, it's like, okay, maybe there's something legitimate that Donald Trump is losing voters in the Rust Belt, but like what would cause voters in the Rust Belt to leave? People have pointed to abortion. My problem with that is Nevada is far more pro-abortion than Iowa or Michigan or Wisconsin. It's like more pro-abortion than California, actually. And Nevada, in the polling and in the early data, at a minimum, you could say narrow Kamala Harris win in a state that Biden won by like 2 to 3 points, which would prove abortion. If abortion can't sink you there when it's on the ballot, or it can barely sink you there when it's on the ballot, how is it going to sink you in Wisconsin or Michigan, where it's already codified in the state law? Like Iowa, say what you will about Iowa. The thing I will say is you could just drive an hour and get an abortion. I don't condone it, but you have a lot of people in the general public that do that stuff. It's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's how people operate. And also, if you could just drive an hour to the Wisconsin border or Minnesota or Missouri or Nebraska, one of these other states where they have it legal, like why exactly would that be your top issue? Unless you're a Democrat who's just getting gaslit, and that's typically the thing. The border is far bigger, and it's a real problem. It impacts everybody, not some like freak accident story the left likes to talk about. Now, if they win on that issue, it's like they've just defrauded the public by lying to them. The ads worked. It's sad, but it's the way it is. But as of right now, I'm not sure I can go there and say that, because even in the midterms, Republicans who were not, I guess you would say, not very, I guess you would say like hardlining on the topic, actually did very well. Those that were the hardliners did do very poorly, but the ones who weren't did well. I will say the number one way Dobbs arguably impacted the midterms, besides those races in like Michigan or Pennsylvania, was the fact that you had Democrats fundraise a hell of a lot of money off of it, and they were able to use that to their cash advantage too. So that's important to keep in mind. Olivia Williams says, how do we get only Trump voters to vote after 24? That's a good question. Hopefully the ground game can pick up this year. If Trump wins, you could use that as momentum in 26 and 28 for sure. We'll see. Eaters of Dead says, I cannot for the life believe that freedom, liberty, and sovereignty are tied 49-49 on the eve of the election. If it's lost, only us have to blame. Yeah, it shows people aren't showing up. Polls usually aren't really all that off base. And people need to show up to make that accurate. Now, obviously, yes, 2020, you had a polling miss of about, 3%? A little bit less than that. But again, there were far more undecideds then than there are now. I'm believing that, yeah, the end result of the polling is probably accurate. And whoever turns out the more low propensity voters, which so far seems to be Trump, whoever that person is going to win this election. So that's why I think Trump is the favorite. I haven't released my final prediction. It's going to be out tomorrow. But I still believe, yes, the low propensity voters, what issues are they going to be voting on? I feel like abortion is not of concern to a 45-year-old man who lives in like exurban, like St. Clair County, Michigan. Like, I don't think that person is going to vote for Kamala Harris. I think they're going to turn out to vote for Trump. I really do. You know, maybe if DeSantis was the nominee, or you run somebody who's like known for passing like abortion bans or whatever, it would be a different ballgame. Democrats would have that upper hand, but Donald Trump is somebody that kind of neutralizes that. Of course, there's a lot of people that don't like Trump, but he still neutralizes a lot of those things that people try to brand Republicans as, because Trump knows how to pick his battles accordingly when it comes to electoral politics. Antonis Andriotis says, will you be talking with your friend David on election night like you did in 2020? David, I don't believe is going to be on the stream. I think I'm going to do it solo. We'll have a decision desk that will be giving me updates, but as far as I'm concerned, it's probably just going to be a solo stream. True Scholar says, I'm a high-res voter and voted early. How many are like me? A lot of people, I'm sure. Andrew Mortensen says, if Trump loses, it's our own fault. We lose. If Trump loses, we must win. Get your asses off the couch and vote. Make this an election and never forget. Exactly. We have enough people to be a ground game. We have enough people to swamp whatever nonsense they're doing. We can do it. It's up to us. It's really up to us. If we're unwilling to move mountains to help Trump get elected, we're also unable to complain about any nefarious antics that will be going on, which I suspect there's going to be a lot less in certain places, especially as they're getting caught in Pennsylvania, they're getting caught in Georgia, and if they're getting caught, they're not going to be able to get away. And if one state can't get away with it, the other states realize they can't get away with it. So we'll see. But it's true. I don't think Josh Shapiro wants Harris winning, and you're having people get caught. I wonder why. Republicans are winning court cases. What's going on? Let's see. Johnny Hartog says, what time does the stream start? Probably 5:30 Eastern. John Waffle says, I think Michigan and Pennsylvania go to Trump. The polls are in his favor. Again, Pennsylvania, I think Michigan might be a little tougher, but I haven't put out my final prediction yet. But Pennsylvania, it's a matter of just understanding how the climate has shifted politically. I don't think people understand what's motivating voters. People are not going to turn away from Trump twice due to his quote-unquote personality if they stuck with him twice. I don't think people realize how bad it was before 2020 with Trump. Every single day, the media is throwing a temper tantrum about some controversy that doesn't even exist. So it's like, I don't think that that's going to cause people to defect. When it comes to abortion, I think that's going to maybe help turn out more Democrats than usual. I think that Trump probably would have an easier path to victory, but it doesn't really mean that it's going to impede his victory a whole lot, because if that's all the Democrats have, well, they don't really have a lot. And it's kind of like they're shadow boxing because they're not even running against a position Donald Trump has. So the election, like I've said, is a collective IQ test for the country. You have an administration that either has just destroyed the country, or an administration that has, led the country to prosperity. He had some speed bumps for sure, but the fact that Trump has a lot better people around him should probably prove that a lot of those speed bumps this time around probably get alleviated, and I think as a result, he's growing his coalition quite a bit. The question is he going to get that level of turnout necessary to win this thing? That's what's going to determine the outcome. Let's see. Sam Godwin for 20. Antonis Andriotis says, if Trump wins, will you cry tears of joy and give Harris and Biden metaphorically. Philip M. says, I think Dems are cannibalizing more of their election day voters than Republicans are cannibalizing theirs. Yeah, in some states they are, for sure. Michael says, Trump rally in eastern North Carolina is packed starting early morning all through the rally. Riley Moore says it's going to be scary because of what's about to happen in 2 days. Johnny Hartog says, if we had the old Republican guard, would we lose? Oh, probably, honestly. I think a lot would be different. Eaters of Dead says, what happens to the GOP if the election's lost or stolen? Will be the death of the Republican Party. What happens to Trump? Well, Trump probably, I don't know what's going to happen to him. That's a whole nother thing. But we're not there yet. Hopefully we don't go there, but we'll see. Newton Meters for 10 says, what does WEDS hold for you? I don't know what you mean by that. Kind of used to having you around, maybe transition to your own. Oh, what does Wednesday hold for you? So what am I going to do after the election is what you're saying. Well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. As for what content I'll post, I mean, we're probably going to have a lot of things to cover for sure, regardless. But if Trump wins, there's going to be a lot more to cover. I would like to see. BPD SIU says 15 to 20 pollsters should range a 1 to 8 point difference. Every swing poll is at a +1 or a tie. A national tie poll makes 0 sense when polls or populations are considered. Well, like either way, you probably would have to think that the pollsters are trying to hedge their bets on not being wrong, if anything. Now, it's very possible that you are seeing what they call herding, but then again, like what results are we seeing? We're seeing like a bunch of ties, a bunch of Trump +1s, a bunch of Harris +1s. The liberal pollsters are putting out the Harris by 2s. So I don't know. I really don't know what's going on in the world of polling. I have not made a final popular vote prediction, but I do anticipate it to be close. Stephen Kanizik says, remember the 5th of November, the honking treason and plot. I know of no reason why the honk treason should have. Well, hopefully we can win this thing. Okay. We don't have to worry about the shady activities, but we'll see if we get any of those. But like I said, don't believe everything you read, but some of what you read might be true. Just see what happens. Johnny Hartdog says, I think that poll was done by an intern for a joke. No, I mean, they did the poll. How did J.B. Pritzker get access to the poll beforehand? That's another question. But what can I say? Kyle Beckman for 20 says, federal judge and Supreme Court appointments are on the line and the fate of the Constitution, national sovereignty, and national peace are on the line. Vote for Trump and down ballot America First Republicans. It's true. Vote red no matter who, honestly. We understand what happens. We understand what happens when we don't. M says, did you see the Nevada voter registration data for October? GOP outran Dems in registrations by 10K. I can't see Trump losing Nevada. Yeah, and if there was this enthusiasm surge for Harris on the Democrat side, why would it not be reflected in the registration data? Like, why is she mostly pivoted away completely from trying to turn out, like, you know, black voters, for example, black men, because she knows she can't do it, to trying and peeling off like white Republican women, probably to no avail. Like, she just is trying to find a coalition. What is the Harris coalition? Besides people who just hate Trump. And I don't believe that's enough. Because, yeah, there's some people who don't like Trump personally, but like the policy that'll vote for him anyways. He's going to win the double haters for sure. And there's less of them because Trump has more people this time around that like him. The problem is, will they show up? That's all we have to worry about. Johnny Hartdog says the big 3 states are not as close as the polls say. William Furr says thoughts on Colorado early voting. We already covered the early voting there, but I don't believe it to be in play just because the independents are very, very Democrat. It is not a state we have to be concerned about at all. They probably call it a poll closing. Michael Williams for 10 says, what's your opinion on Alan Lichtman, who says his method predicted 9 of the last 10 elections? He says Harris is going to win. Well, here's the problem with Alan Lichtman. Lichtman is somebody who decided to, for the first time in his life, put out an election map. And it made no sense, by the way, just for the record. But the same guy who said you can't predict using the margins, you can't do that, he puts out an election map. So what? If Trump wins, he can say, well, I was only off in these 2 states. Yeah, that's not how your model works. You can call me a hypocrite because I say margins matter. They do matter. But I'm just saying he's the hypocrite for saying that his key model was the infallible one if Trump wins. But also, on top of it, he doesn't apply his keys consistently. Maybe he's hedging his bets on a Harris win, but if Harris wins, it's not going to be because of his keys. It will not be because of his keys. It will be in spite of his keys, but it will not be because of his keys. But yes, she can win, of course, but it's going to be no thanks to him. Just like Harris can win, but it's going to be no thanks to the Seltzer poll. He needs some milk for 10 says, I voted early for the first time in my life today. I was always an election day voter. I want a popular vote win, so any Any stuff Raskin and company pull will have to be done against the will of the people. Exactly. We want the mandate. If Trump wins the popular vote, everything they say goes out the window. Everything they say about, repeal the Electoral College, do this, do that. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Jaquith Rhymes for 10 says, hey, what do you think of Captain Seth Kessel's research showing a Trump landslide? Regardless of your answer, everyone vote like your life depends. I haven't seen that research, but yeah, we got to vote. Landslide, I don't see a landslide. I'll be shocked if Trump wins a state like Virginia or New Hampshire or New Mexico. And that's not to say there's like 0% chance. Like even if you're in California or Massachusetts, vote and bring everybody with you. What I will say is I will be very shocked to see Trump flip a state like beyond Michigan. Like it would be shocking to me. And maybe I'm just dooming, but I don't think so. I think, you look at the data, you look at the demographics, I played around with the swingometer, it's going to be very difficult. But the most accurate modeler that I know in the state of Virginia, who was dead on the past 4 elections and knows how to model the early vote, and he's being cautious for Trump. He says it's a 5-point state right now. So if Virginia is even within 5, Donald Trump is going to win the election because it does carry over. You're not losing the state of Georgia or North Carolina, and you're probably rebounding with college-educated whites, at least college-educated white men by enough, to the point where you're going to stop a little bit of bleeding in the Philly suburbs. And, if you're running it up in rural Virginia, you're probably getting good white working class turnout overall. Pennsylvania, you're probably winning the state. You're probably winning the election at that point, regardless of what even happens in Michigan or Wisconsin, which at that point, I think both of those states would go too. At least Wisconsin. Montana Rich says, we're voting out Tester in Montana. You swing state voters need to do your job. Vote, vote, vote. It's true. Jay Frade 19 says, a big debate between myself and some of my friends is about early vote versus election day turnout. What's the data about cannibalization? What about Republican defections? Republican defections might be higher in the early vote because typically the early vote leans left. So if you're like a Biden voter or a Harris voter that happens to be a registered Republican, you're probably going to be voting early. But still, when you have so many Trump voters switching to early, you're probably going to have less defections overall as a proportion of the early vote. And election day is still going to be more Trumpian of the Republican electorate, of the independent electorate that is going to end up showing up. So when you look at that, it's like also, what about the cannibalization? The first-time voters are, for the first time, Republican. They're Republican. They've never been Republican before in recent memory when we've tracked this stuff. So when you look at that, it's like, okay, something is happening here. Maybe it's not going to hold up. People need to get out and vote, but I mean, like, damn, this is actually good. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, here's a video idea for after the election. Do an analysis of mock elections the schools have been doing. They're heavily for Trump, indication of the future. Yeah, I mean, it's true. The younger electorate will be very telling, regardless of outcome. The younger portion of the electorate. If you're seeing 18 to 24 voters, like men under 24 voting for Trump, it's like, okay, something is happening here. But again, I don't believe you're going to see this ridiculous shift to the left among seniors like some of these polls are saying. I don't see it. Especially because seniors are more, set in their ways about voting anyways. If you're a Trump voter, you're going to stay a Trump voter. Antonis Andriotis says, how do we win if it's a close race? Well, we win. We outvote them. That's it. Trevor Hint says, heard an ad on the radio today where they tried telling us Dan Osborne would be more of an ally to Trump than Deb Fisher. Yeah, it's just bogus. It's just bogus. Not going to happen. Tucker Corngay says, first state is called with significance in what time? Well, by with significance, I think you mean like which swing state? Because Florida, I think, gets called at 8 when the Panhandle polls close. Georgia probably is going to be the first swing state called. Georgia or North Carolina, because they're going to be counting quickly in Georgia. If Trump wins Georgia, that'll be a big boost to him. If he gets Georgia and North Carolina, holds his 2020 states, he can win with just Pennsylvania, or he can win if he gets Wisconsin and Arizona. He's going to cross the finish line to 270. So we'll see. Vince Dow is in chat, says your energy drink fund for Tuesday. Yeah, I don't know. Energy drink? I don't know if I'm going to need one. Coffee should probably suffice, but I'll appreciate the super chat. We're going to be live for like 10 hours. Why not? Carter W says, what do you think Ralston's prediction would be? I don't know. Like, he might have Trump up. He seems like he's having Trump up. He put a joke out yesterday. I mean, obviously it seemed like it was a joke. He's like, we're going to accept mail till Friday. So why don't I just post my prediction on Wednesday? It's like, we're going to have 70% of the vote counted in Nevada on Wednesday. It's like, you just don't want to admit Trump is the favorite in Nevada because he obviously is. And again, early voting data is not perfect. It's not perfect in a lot of places, but it's very indicative in a place like Nevada, because Nevada has most of its electorate vote early. Even in 2022, it's like 90% of the electorate almost voted early. So it's like, okay, if Trump is like neck and neck in the early vote in Nevada, he's going to win Nevada. And that assumes that, he even has some Republican defections in the early vote, or he doesn't win independents in the early vote. They're banking on younger voters who are registered independents flocking to Kamala Harris. It's honestly kind of delusional, because a lot of those younger voters who are registered independents don't like the Democrat Party. They're not enthused for Kamala, and a lot of them are probably going to break for Trump. A lot of them. If they want to believe in it, if they want to live by age depolarization, they're going to have to die by age depolarization. I don't make the rules. They're making the rules. I'm just applying the rules. MH says, what's up with Pennsylvania's fluctuating polls? Trump was ahead, then he's behind, now he's ahead, and how is he losing in Wisconsin? Well, CNN's garbage. Like, that's it. I'm not going to do this thing where I give pollsters credit because they put out wacky results. I'm not going to do that. Like, you have Harris +1, Trump +1, Harris +2. Like, this whole argument about the herd. Let's go back to 2020, for example, and look at some of these polls. The only one that wasn't herding was a right-aligned Susquehanna and a right-aligned Trafalgar. The other polls, you get Biden 8, Biden +8, Biden +8, Biden +5. Like, it's not really the way they want it to be. They want to have this narrative. But it's honestly that the actual polls tend to be in line with like the right-leaning pollsters, where Trafalgar and Atlas Intel are posting the same results as like Suffolk, which is usually more liberal, and Emerson, which underestimated Trump in Wisconsin. So they just want to have this this hope. And I don't know. The Seltzer poll is just it's ridiculous, folks. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I said if it's within 8, I will delete my channel. And that's how confident I am. If it's within 7 or 8, I think 7. We said 7. If it's within 7, this channel will go down. That's how confident I am. Book it. I will donate my entire bank account to some charity if it's within 7. It's not going to be within 7. So let's see. Antonis Andriatis says, will there be new voters this year voting for Trump? Absolutely. Okay, we have to refresh the chat. We have to refresh. That's what happens when we have 5,000 people in live chat, even though it's past midnight on the East Coast. You guys are doing great. Like the stream, subscribe. We're getting through it. We're getting through the super chats for sure. But let's see where we were. Yeah, there are new voters voting for Trump. A lot of them. J Freed 19 says, thoughts on possible polling overcorrection. I'm unsure what that would entail. Because what are they doing to overcorrect? And even so, wouldn't overcorrecting make sense if the polls were kind of wrong, if they are changing their methodology? I'm not sure. But Trump's on the ballot. Like, you can't use the midterms as a benchmark. And even then, it was only really like the right-leaning pollsters that were really that off in the midterms, and now they're showing the same results that all the other pollsters are showing. So, what does that entail? Michigan Nationalist says Senate and House GOP will outrun Trump like in 16 and 20. Well, that'll be interesting. I'm sure in some places they will. I don't think it's going to happen in like Arizona with the Senate race, or Nevada with the Senate race, or Montana or Ohio with the Senate race. Die for Oil says, ready to bring it home. I was wondering why your live streams don't show up on your channel after you end them. Don't always get a chance to see them live. I mean, this one, we could keep this one public, and I could even make some of the more recent ones public too. Antonis Andriatis says, will Trump be hyped? Well, Trump is going to be high. I would hope so if he wins. The British Perspective says, Trump train is bounds for glory. Trump train, yeehaw. Krishan Lal says, DNC is paying off pollsters to put out suppression polls. Sad. Also, does New Hampshire being closer tell us about how swing states will vote? No, not really. Although, like I said, Biden had that unique point of strength in the Northeast. You're going from Scranton Joe, Irish Joe. He was always known in that region. He was always popular in that region. And then you replace Biden, who already lost popularity in that region, with Kamala Harris from San Francisco. Like, you understand, like, the difference there. Maybe that's more for Eastern Pennsylvania, but it's like Biden's home field advantage was real. Even if it was half a point, that's huge. Pennsylvania's a close state. You're taking that away. That doesn't even take into account the fact that the macro environment now is far better for Trump than it was in 2020. Far better, which is why it's difficult to see him lose, but people need to show up. Like, when you look at the fundamentals, it's very hard to see Trump lose without twisting yourself into a pretzel. I'm sorry. It's hard to see him lose. Mountain Goddess is California here. Don't forget to track your vote. Go to your Secretary of State website, sign up for text and email for your ballot getting counted. Yeah, you guys should do that to make sure it gets counted. Johnny Hartog for 20 says, after the last stream I checked, and Bejic's middle school was named after his father. He's very nice. My sister got a car declined at a gas station. She went to pay cash, but he paid the tab. Interesting. Darth Chipmunk says, day 2 of asking Red Eagle to unban my rep alt. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Awaken America says, why isn't Election Day a federal holiday? I don't know. It should be, honestly. We should scale back early voting, scale back mail-in voting, make it a federal holiday, and make it make it run smoothly. Make voting be like, the Chick-fil-A drive-thru or something. Just make sure that people can vote seamlessly, and then make sure that we can count our results. It doesn't all have to be like Florida, but we at least should know the winner of every state after like 3 or 4 hours of counting. That's all we really need, okay? I'm not asking for too much here. Like, use common sense. Streamline the process a little bit more. There's no reason not to do it. Johnny Hartdog says he didn't know or make a big deal. He just did it. He needs some milk, says our mentality needs to be we'll win, but we have to vote. Yeah, exactly. Like, the odds of Trump winning are high. Everybody knows it. Like, it's like you try to find reasons why he would fall short, and you have to like twist yourself into a pretzel and say, well, this one poll that's been accurate, but has not always been accurate, is showing a schizophrenic crackhead result. So you have to believe that or something. Like, no, you don't. I don't care what direction it's in. The direction of a poll does not matter. It rarely matters. Polls, the direction of polls in Florida moved left in 2020. Florida did not move left in 2020. Same thing with Nevada. Like, the direction cope is just absurd, for the record. I don't buy that. And it could maybe move left, but I don't think it's going to be in part due to that poll, because if you weighted the poll by recall vote properly, Trump wouldn't even be losing at all. He'd be up by like 7 or 8. Tide says, what are your odds for Trump victory? You were close in 20, but wrong, and Trump has never been up in the polls. What makes you think they underestimate him? I think you mean overestimate him. Like I said, the odds probably, I'd say 2-1. And I did not say 2-1 in 2020. I said it was closer to 50-50. I gave him the upper hand because I knew the polls were underestimating him, and I was right. And we had a damn good result in terms of what I predicted. And everybody knows we had so many election law changes. A lot of stuff happened. But this time, I believe that the polls are going to be more accurate, but the polls also have them up. There's less undecideds. I think in Wisconsin, they're probably underestimating him again. It's not going to be by 7 points, but people need to get the hell out and vote. Like, that's it. Some people in chat are saying that I'm being too optimistic, and then there's some people in chat saying, like, I'm dooming. It's like neither of those things are true. I'm just trying to view it objectively. I'm trying to present the argument the way it is. And I think the argument the way it is Trump is over. I don't understand the arguments that Kamala would be favored. I don't. You'd have to have a massive defection from Trump 2-time voters because, that was just the final straw. It's like, I don't think people buy that. I don't buy the Trump fatigue argument. He got a record amount of votes in the primaries. Record. Was setting raw vote records in every state before Haley dropped out. Would that be a sign of Trump fatigue? I don't think so. Adam Clark says, I have faith in a Trump victory, but I believe Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan will take a long time in counting votes, and those 3 probably would push a Trump win over. Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin will probably know in the early morning, like 2, 3 a.m. what happens, and Arizona, I think we're going to have a good idea after the first early vote dump and as some of the election day vote gets counted, but will it be enough to determine the outcome then and there? Who knows? But hopefully it's a decisive enough victory that we'll have a call on election night, but you never know. Mr. Jimmy says the same people using 2022 as a way to predict how Trump is doomed are the same people in 2020 that used 2018 to be a 413er. Exactly. They don't understand politics. They don't understand how this works. You cannot use the midterms as an indicator for anything. If you did the polling game in 2018, they did the polling game then too. Polls did underestimate Democrats in Arizona by a lot, in Georgia, in Nevada, in Michigan. There weren't really races in Pennsylvania that were competitive, but again, in Wisconsin, the polls were not far off. In fact, they overestimated people like Scott Walker and Leah Vuckmer. So you can't really use the midterms as a benchmark. You can't. I'm just saying that objectively. You want to cherry pick results from one election and ignore the other, 2 elections with Trump on the ballot. Which one do you think is a little bit more indicative? Obviously, we know the answer. David Haynes says if the Democrats have given up on North Carolina, pulled the money, put it into Virginia, why was Walz there today and why would Trump be spending so much time there? I don't think they've given up on North Carolina. They diverted some money, but they didn't give up. I know that for a fact. And keep in mind, even if they're not bullish on North Carolina, it's clear that they don't feel that strong on some of these Rust Belt states like Wisconsin. They know they're going to have to win a state like North Carolina or Georgia to get Kamala to 270. But Trump knows if he goes to Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, which is where he went today, that's good enough. Now, I don't know how much rallies really impact election results. I'm not convinced that they're all that indicative. Most people have made up their minds. It's more about turnout, boosting turnout, seeing what happens. But I don't know. The Kamala campaign, you have so many mixed signals, but I'd say overall they're not that confident. David Axelrod himself was accurate that the polls would come back to Trump. He also says that there's no enthusiasm in the black community for Harris, and that's why she's pushing the Republican, trying to get Republican women to defect so much. The only question is, do you think Republicans at all are going to just jump ship from Trump if they stuck with him twice? Like, she's appealing to a coalition of voters they probably already have. Like, maybe she's stopping the bleeding of some voters back to Trump, but I don't know. Michael Orm says, doubt Oregon flips, but some people have been bullish on Trump's odds in that state due to, Oregon's not going to flip. I'm not trying to doom, okay? I'm just trying to be honest. If Oregon flips, that's like the Seltzer poll being, accurate the other way. It's not, I just don't see it. It could be closer though. It could be a lot closer. Watch it for sure. The far left, if the far left is not enthused for Harris in Portland, I don't think she's going to get margins in places like Ann Arbor that she needs to win Michigan. Ice Cream Junkie says, why did Trump tank in the betting odds on Saturday? The Seltzer poll. King Caboose 2003 says Virginia will be hopefully. Look, if Trump wins Virginia, I'd be the first person to celebrate. I would be the first person to celebrate. But I'm not sure. I'm not ready to go there yet. It's going to be closer, though, but I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm not. Security TV says 164,000 duplicates found in Michigan. Do you think there will be a lot of shenanigans in Election Day? Shenandoah Valley mail voting 91% Trump. Well, the last part is good. I don't know what's going on in Michigan. I just tell people to vote. I know there was the case of the Chinese student who voted presumably for Harris in the election illegally, and they caught it, but somehow the vote's going to count. So people need to be on watch and just vote. If there's one state I'd be a little sus about, it probably would be Michigan, more so than Pennsylvania or Georgia or North Carolina or Arizona. But still, it's a very winnable state. A lot of these reports, there might be some truth to them, but don't believe everything you read on the internet and go vote, and we can address it afterwards. Believe you have to treat it like it's a psyop to prevent you from voting. Like that's it, and they do. And some of these psyops are real psyops. When the networks air the graphics on screen, they're like, randomly ABC will air the graphic that Kamala wins Pennsylvania. Obviously, yes, it's a test run. They've done those things before. They're never the end result, but they know people will take it when there's no, I guess you would say pretense to it. They know people will take it, run with it, put it on social media, and demoralize people with the quote, the fix us in, and then people don't show up. That's, I feel like, where the real trickery is, more so than, they don't know the results. They don't even know how many people are going to show up and vote. Tucker Cornegay says, any chance you could do a poll asking whether you're a first-time Trump voter, 2020 Biden defector, or Trump 2020 repeat voter? I've done that before on my community tab, actually. Ice Cream Junkie says, when do you think we'll have the results from the Big Seven? Well, like I said, North Carolina, Georgia first. Arizona, Nevada, forget about it, probably about 35 years later. Rust Belt, kind of in between. But we'll have indicators in every state for sure. We'll have indicators. Jay Jazz says, apparently New Jersey's in play. What do you know? Well, the early vote is Republican, but the mail-in vote, which is a big chunk of it, is not. So it's a mixed bag, but we're going to do better in New Jersey for sure. Mitchell Ryan says, not dooming, but did you see that in Michigan? There's a county with double the amount of votes that there are. I don't know what county you're talking about. I heard about that, but I don't see it. If a county has a ridiculous amount of votes, then we'll know. But other than that, I'm not particularly worried about it. But I will say they need to purge those voter rolls like there's no tomorrow, and they're not doing it. But we need to vote. People need to vote, and they can beat it. I mean, you think 2016 was a fraud-free election? I can't say it was, but people need to just show up. Frankie Jr. says, God saved Trump's life for a reason. Go vote. Exactly. Tom Dill says, despite the court wins and strong enthusiasm, I'm traumatized by 2020. Kamala scares me. Well, get out and vote regardless. That's all you can do. It's okay to be scared or be worried or, don't you come in with low expectations. I get that. But I will say, just make sure you show up and vote and get everyone else to vote. So at least you did your part. You're not going to have to worry about anything. And that goes for everybody. And if you already voted, find people who haven't voted that and make sure they do. Brian says, really see the funny stuff happening in House and Senate races. Trump too likely to win. So less people know. Well, we'll see. They could even outrun Trump in some cases. I'm very bullish on Hovde in Wisconsin, believe it or not. Not so much on Rogers in Michigan, but I am bullish on Hovde. Michigan Nationalists says pick Kemp, Ossoff, Cooper, Tillis, Ohio Open Senate. We're not to 2026 yet. I think Kemp could win that race. I think Tillis might even hold it. And then that if Trump wins, the Senate race in Ohio, if we have a decent nominee, probably does win. Jimmy Rumney says, new kid book, The Return of the King, out now. Wonder Bread TC for 10 says, some of the swing states say they'll take 1 to 2 weeks to count votes. We need a blowout, so there's no room for... Well, here's the deal about that. Like Maricopa County, they're going to take a while. We should still be able to win Arizona. I will say that in regards to Georgia, they're not going to have the results for a couple days. It's no, they're going to put most of the results in by 9 o'clock. There are a few military ballots. They're probably Republican ballots, actually, that are going to come in after. Chazy DAU says, build the red firewall. Michigan caught 168 duplicates. Eric Z says, how we're looking on the Amish vote. It could win Trump, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Scott Press, well, I don't know how many have registered. Even if it's 1,000, it could help. I don't think Trump's story of the night, if he wins Pennsylvania, will be the Amish, unless he sees a ridiculous surge in Lancaster County. There's a lot of other things going on. Easy Money says, is Wisconsin or Pennsylvania more likely to go to Trump? I'd say... I don't know. Probably honestly Wisconsin. I think both are possibly in the same ballpark. Real Unique says the Diddy thing is hurting Harris. Celebrity endorsements mean nothing unless you're a mindless zombie. I mean, I don't think that it helps or hurts, but yeah, I mean, she goes out there to the rally. She's got Cardi B, who is just a horrible artist, horrible influence on people as well, mainly young women. And she goes up there and the Cardi B's admitted to raping men, drugging them, taking their money. This is who the associates are. These are admitted people. They like to throw false allegations at people like Trump. But this is admitted and it doesn't matter. She's platformed. She's given the script that she could barely read off of. It's painful to watch. It's seriously, this is not a good look. As much as people want to dog on that comedian who probably, why invite that guy to be on? It wasn't Trump's fault, but somebody invited that guy who's known for being edgy to that event. And obviously the media just took it and ran with it. I don't think it's going to impact the race, but that is on the other hand, you don't have the moral high ground when you platform people like that. You just don't. RZ410 says you should consider a podcast. Well, this is kind of a podcast. Maybe it could be a more formal podcast. We're going to do something. I don't know what it's going to be, but there's a lot of stuff to be done. J, 3 places. What's the chance of Trump winning Minnesota, Virginia, New Hampshire, New Mexico? Like I said, very slim. Like it could just be 10%. I don't know. Andrew M says, you have my respect and been a long-time supporter. Data SoCal account tweeted, DMs are real and are cutting ties. Can you explain? I haven't heard about that. All I know is I've sponsored polls, and I've never spiked the poll. I've never coerced anyone to spike a poll. There have been some polls that have been produced that I disagree with the sample, disagree with the weighting. I've never tried to spike a poll to defraud the public. I can say that right now. So, people want to take things out of context. You have people that are known for faking, leaking, DMs and faking them. It's not the first time it's happened. Not just to, these people doing it. A lot of people do it to a lot of people. But no, I've never spiked a poll. These people in the election mafia want to create and craft this narrative because they want to ruin my integrity because, I've been over it before. But they're trying to control the narrative for some reason. And it's ironic because what the DMs apparently show is that my poll was not spiked. They just try to claim, well, you tried to spike, but I didn't try to spike it. A lot of it is just tabloid gossip nonsense from a lot of these people. And it's just a red herring. It's a red herring completely. Now, there's a lot of polls in the mainstream media we know damn well get spiked. We know damn well that partisan pollsters don't release certain polls, but they release other polls, and that's fine. And nobody cares. Nobody says about integrity or whatever. People shelve polls. People don't shelve polls. It's just how it works. So that's the way it goes. Did I do anything wrong? Absolutely not. Did I do everything correctly? Absolutely. And that's the way it goes. So Andrew K says, justice for Peanut. Oh, that was a mess. They take somebody's pet. It's an internet sensation. And they say, oh, you don't have a license for that, so I'm just going to take the pet and euthanize. Like, that is just disturbing. That is just disturbing right there. I don't care what people think about, people owning like rodents or whatever. You can't do something like that. That's just wrong. Gerald Armstrong says the 13 keys are so subjective. Exactly. King Caboose 2003 says the 2028 primary is shaping up to be a very strong field, and if the Dem primary, if Kamala loses, will be a shit show. Oh yeah. Now, to be fair, you could make a case they have a bench that's stronger, but like to them, like Newsom, Whitmer, Ossoff, all these people, but I don't know. Mountain Goddess for 10 says, don't forget there are Dem Republican people who vote in and act as spies as Dems. Check their records, primary the heck out of them. Perth Luxury says, there are times like these now I wish Trump could tell more zingers like Reagan did at rallies. Well, Trump's like a stand-up comedian at rallies. Like they say, oh, he has lower energy or it's like rambling. It's like, no, he weaves. It's the art of the weave. Like that was a good one. A good line. It's true. He does weave. He does always come back to where he starts. He's always kind of done that in a way. If you watch some of his older rallies in 2016, but he just has like more, he was more boisterous back then. Now he's like, a little bit more mellow, but his favorable ratings have gone up. So he must be more likable, isn't he? He'd have to be. XJ Cherokee Beer says, let's make Harry Sisson cry. Oh, absolutely. Hello. Mickey92 says, are you aware lawsuits are being thrown around already we're winning some of them. People need to vote. It is nerve-wracking, but people need to vote. If you can't channel that energy into voting, I can't help people. I can't help the country. Michigan Nationalist says, so Fulton and DeKalb will be fully counted early. The early votes will be. Then they're going to have to drop the other results. Eaters of Dead says, what electoral college count would be considered a landslide? Don't say 270 or 312. I mean, in this day and age, landslides, you're not going to get a Reagan landslide. We're too polarized, too many Democrats. Democrats have fortified their own states, like kind of how Republicans have done so in Florida. I'm not just talking about shenanigans, but, certain states are more blue. They do things to keep them blue. Republicans are starting to do the same thing in some red states, which is good, but not necessarily like in terms of these swing states. So in terms of these, the landslide, as you mentioned, the landslide, I think winning 312 decisively is probably going to be enough to be a realistic landslide. Eric from Wisconsin says, for your coffee and in memory of Peanut the Squirrel. Thank you. Son Goku says, the only way Harris can win is if 2022 happens and a bunch of female voters turn out because of abortion, because Trump has improved with minorities and other demographics heavily. Well, you want to know something? The gender gap was smaller in the midterms. Like, I don't understand that people don't grasp it. The main issue was you had candidates on the Democrat side who were able to, fundraise off of Roe, and that played to their advantage across the board. And you also had Republicans who were abortion abolitionists running in Pennsylvania and Michigan, 2 states that are relatively pro-Trump but also pro-choice, pro-abortion. So it's kind of tough to have to strike that balance, and it sucks that that's the way it is. It's not like, the pre-Roe era where you could just say whatever you want and nobody's really going to care because they don't really think it's like at risk. You have to walk on eggshells, and it sucks that you have to do it. And it sucks that there's a lot of people whose only vote relies on that, and people buy these, lies from the left about, certain things like, there's no late-term abortions, and they claim people are like dying because they don't have, there's a life of the mother exception in every single state. I don't understand it. And when you look into these cases, it's like, this person died because they took a bad abortion pill. It's like, okay, so how would that exactly be Republicans' faults? I just don't get it. I don't get it. Gerald Armstrong says Trump made a 90-second speech on NBC tonight before the game because of Kamala being on SNL. Yeah, it was equal time rule. And by the way, that sketch is just so passé. Trump did it, and it was actually funny. And by the way, I know that he was not the first one to do it. I know that people like Romney and other people have done it in the past, but still, it's just it was not as funny. It made me visibly cringe. It did. And there are people I don't know, if Biden did it, it might have been less cringe. And I don't like Biden. But at least Biden can be funny. Every time he opens up his mouth, he messes up. He's the gift that keeps on giving. Kamala Harris is just I don't know, man. She's awful. I really hope she loses. I just don't understand. You have to have TDS and or buy the media nonsense to vote for her. And I feel like less people do now. We just have to get our people out to the polls. R. Gravy says earliest we'll know the winner Tuesday night or well, it could be Tuesday night. 7 Dennis 123 says, did you see the local New Hampshire poll? Trump +1. I did not see it. Let's see. I don't see anything new with polling, by the way. Did Ralston release his update? I don't think so. No, he didn't. A lot of the mail in Nevada, they're not even going to count it till Tuesday. So we're not even going to know. So we'll see whatever he comes up with. It's going to be a range of possibilities. He'll be like, Kamala +1 to Trump +1. You get Trump +1. Oh, I was right. It's yeah, it's not how it works, buddy. It's just not. B. Dunn says, we're losing 26 no matter what, so 24 is crucial. Well, that's a good mindset to have. Yeah, you don't get to redo. You don't get to hit the reset button. You just don't. Through King 94 says, since when do we Trumpers care about polls? Go vote. The only Tuesday poll is the only poll that matters. We cannot underestimate Dems. Go vote. It's true. You have to disregard the polls when you vote. That goes. I mean, if they have you down, you do it. If they have us up. That's the problem. It's not like we're down in the polls again and we're we got to disregard and go vote. We're up in the polls and people are acting like it's over. Because they have PTSD from one election or another. We never led the polls, and we outran the polls in 2020. We outran them. H. Hako 1 for 10 says, I laugh when LTE called the Des Moines Register poll the most accurate ever. Trump has it. He'll lose some support with Asians and college-educated, but makes gains with every other demographic. I don't know if he's going to lose with Asians, but they're not really a decisive demographic. I think it depends on which ethnicity of Asian. As for the Des Moines Register poll, it has been one of the most accurate gold standard polls in the country. That is not wrong. The problem is that this is not going to age well. If they came up with a Biden Biden +2, Biden +3 in 2020, it would, I legitimately would have said the same thing, and I would have been proven right. Iranian Putin says, thoughts on Fetterman on Rogan? Well, you have somebody that's he's got a little bit of brain damage from the stroke, but he's still willing to go talk. to the media. He's willing to talk to unfriendly media. And there were times I saw from the highlights where Rogan was actually pressing Fetterman on certain things. Kind of in a gotcha way a couple times. But the one thing I'll say is that at least he talked to the media. He did it. Kamala couldn't do that. She couldn't do it. Trevor Hint says, is Vance the front runner in 28? Yes. I think he's the front runner whether Trump wins or loses, but I think if Trump wins, he's almost a lock to be the 28 nominee. Almost a lock. Napoleon the Great for 10 says, my school did a mock election, 51 Harris, 49 Trump, but the gender disparity was massive. My school's very liberal. Young men, wherever I go, are more conservative and have been... Well, it's common sense. Common sense, rationality, like that sort of thing. It's more prevalent, I would say, in young men than young women. But there are a lot of... I mean, like, there's this misconception that all young women are... liberal, and in my experiences, which may not be representative of the entire country, it's not entirely been the case. A lot of people are just apolitical, not even going to show up. A lot of voters don't vote. Prepper003 says, sorry, Red Eagle, but after 20 or 22, I don't see Trump getting into the 260s. We're setting ourselves up for well, why wouldn't he be? Why are you using the midterms as a benchmark for a presidential election in any case? That's number one. Number two, Donald Trump is more popular than he was in 2020. Kamala Harris is less popular than Joe Biden was in 2020. The top issues have changed and now favor Trump overwhelmingly. So why exactly would Trump not be favored? Now you can say, well, still there's a chance that women turn out because of abortion here and here and here, which we're not even really seeing in the early data. This whole like, oh, women are out voting, it's overblown, to be fair. A lot of that is from Republican women who are going to overwhelmingly vote for Trump. But still. MH says the best part of a Trump win is when Kamala has to certify it. Well, we got to get there first, but yeah. Colts for Super Bowl 49 says, I see less Trump and Harris yard signs this year than Trump Biden signs in 12. I see a lot of Trump. In Michigan, there's a lot of Trump signs everywhere. Trump, 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 Trump. There's very few Harris signs. There's probably more Jill Stein signs than Harris signs, to be honest. Texas is like, yeah, Trump signs are not honestly as frequent, but he's obviously going to win the state by more. I feel like there's something about like competitive states versus non-competitive states and where they put the signs out. There were a lot more like Beto stuff in even 2022 than there's like Harris stuff now. I'll say that. But Mark Andrew Hamilton says Gallup Party ID says R plus 1.3 accurate within a point last 6 elections. I can't think of any reason to be wrong this time. Thoughts? Yeah, I thought it was more than that actually, but even if it's from 1 point to like 2 points, that's a massive, massive win for Trump because it means the environment's on his side. Jacob Hawley for 20 says, I'm the more liberal guy who super chatted last stream. I'm the Bernie supporter, but I'll be voting for Trump on Tuesday in Wisconsin. Harris is too far left for me. Liberals for Trump. RFK and Tulsi, what a coalition. Sign me up. Yeah, RFK and Tulsi were big wins to get like these more populist type of people on board in places like Wisconsin, Michigan, a lot of younger voters who are like fed up with the Democrat Party, just building that coalition. It's underrated and appreciate your support. There are a lot of like not so woke, well-meaning people that are in that corner, and I feel like Trump has done a good job of outreaching to those people this cycle. Michael Schools has voted in New York 1. The 1st congressional district, big doubt on a flip, but helping the national popular vote. There you go. The British Perspective says thoughts on Trump and Musk supporting Bitcoin and crypto. I'm not the biggest, most knowledgeable person on it, but it does seem as if they're against like a crypto, like central bank trying to centralize it, regulate it, whatever, which probably, the policies I've heard from Trump and by an extension of that Musk seem solid, I guess you would say. Manny says, are we losing the senior vote in Pennsylvania? Well, in the early vote, yeah, but we're losing the early vote, period. I mean, it's an all mail-in state in the early vote with very little in-person early voting. Now, Donald Trump is going to overwhelmingly win Election Day, which is what matters. He needs to win it by like 11 to win the state. I don't think that's a tough task because every poll I've seen, he's winning it by 11 in the Election Day, which I mean, it's not definitive, but it's very doable. Hamster Eater 96 says Michigan is run by smug, incompetent Karens. The fact Wang Chung is the exchange student was able to vote illegally and have it count shows this. Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. But what can I say? Hopefully they'll make an example out of him and people will be less likely to do it because he got arrested, I think. Charges were pressed. John Waffle says, do you think we'll get the results on election night or at least the next day? Hopefully. Ben Q says, 4 more years of Harris, I'll have to raise rent. I can't afford materials. Love my tenants. It's a shame. Trump 24. Take someone to the polls. Exactly. Housing costs, taxes. Like, this is what people need to understand when they go vote. Watch my last video. DUI Spear says, the one thing I do know is this isn't election day anymore. It's election month, but I hope it gets called on elect. Well, they should be counting faster, which is good. I'll say that. Not as fast as 2016, but much faster than 2020. The Shadow Narwhal says, voted early for Trump down ballot in New Jersey. Dance Music says, mom voted for Trump, dad voted Kamala. I respect both and how they discuss their differences. They each have valid reasons. Thank you. Well, appreciate the super chat. Let's see. DH1399 says, what do you think we should be doing with respect to Elon? Is it missing an opportunity with independents to have zero tolerance for green energy? Well, I don't think there's zero tolerance for green energy. We understand that we need fossil fuels, and that includes natural gas. That includes many forms of it. Not all forms are like going to be as, I guess you would say, pollutant level. As for Trump, he supports solar energy. He's just against wind power, which kind of makes sense because you have all those like turbines everywhere. They're like not really that aesthetic. There's like, you know, they do cause a lot of noise pollution. When Trump said it's a carcinogen, everybody laughed at him. But, you know, there are conflicting studies on that. It's not like the biggest problem with it, but it could be a problem. And then the birds, it's like, yeah, it's like a bird. They're like bird killing machines. And people have to clean the birds out of them. It's disgusting. Ragdoll MMA says we got to make sure there's no suppression Tuesday. Well, yeah, people need to get out and vote. And hopefully the RNC's got lawsuits ready if they try to do what they did in Bucks County again. Jet Jones says, so are you friends? Well, I don't know much about the drama. You people probably know a little bit more than I know. But I feel like people are just taking it and blowing it out of proportion. I don't really have many comments on it. Big Queef says, Jamie Raskin says, let people vote for Trump. If he wins, we'll invoke the 14th Amendment. We will have to be told that the Trump mob, well, here's the deal. He didn't even vote to certify Trump's 2016 win. I don't think he's going to be in line with the majority. That's why the House is important. I tell people this, you have to vote down ballot Republican because if the Democrats take the House and they try to do something, it's unlikely they'll be able to get rid of Trump there, but people need to vote Republican down ballot no matter what, no exceptions, and don't let your friends do it either. Just don't do it. So DS Cuber says, what's your most realistic take on the map? You're going to find that out tomorrow. Joanne Nick says, corporate news bipartisanship is dead. Oh, yeah, it's been dead for a long time. Like, local news stations are probably a little bit better, but even they've got their biases. JJ says, is the situation made... I mean, I've already commented on it. Kotos for 10 says, I know this might sound dumb, but what are the chances you add the polling error of 16 and 20 on top of the polls? Nobody thinks to be considering that, but I don't think it's impossible. Well, that means Trump would win, like, big. I don't think that... I don't think the Selzer poll is going to age well, but I don't think the polls are going to underestimate Trump by a ridiculous amount, depending on the state for sure. But, we'll see. We're going to get some indicators. Election night, we're going to know for sure. The early voting can tell us a little bit, but it can't tell us everything, especially in a lot of these states. Zane says, do you think Georgia and Arizona will be called on election night? Well, Georgia probably will be. Arizona might not be. But keep in mind, the most Democrat votes in Arizona do get counted first. Do keep that in mind. The problem in the midterms with Arizona was mainly the election day problems where people, you had these lines and systems and people go home. Do they always come back? You have close races. A lot of stuff going on there. A lot of stuff. 7 Dennis 123 says, New Hampshire Journal is Trump up by 0.6. That's huge. Bradley Esterline says, how are your nerves going into Tuesday? It's exciting. Definitely you want to get the good result. Our country does kind of hinge on it, but we're going to be just covering the results on election night objectively. Everybody's going to be in chat. We just gotta get these votes counted and see what happens for sure and go from there. But again, like I said, Donald Trump, I don't understand the argument why he wouldn't be favored because the top issues are the issues favoring him. Overall, you could say abortion is not, but again, Is it a top issue among independents when it's like number 4, number 5 among indies? Like, I just can't see it. They're going to need a massive turnout based on that issue alone. And I don't see it in the early data. It's possible it comes out of nowhere on election day. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Mountain Goddess says, did you watch the PBD interview with Mike Benz? He outlines what Dems did in 2020. I did not see it. Also, thoughts on the DOD newest directive? I didn't see that either. Maryland Guy 0326 says, Rasmussen said yesterday there's a 40 to 50% of the Trump voters left in the tank that'll vote in election day, so we didn't cannibalize too bad. No, the cannibalization thing I don't buy at all, because even if everybody votes early, that's better. If somebody decides to, I don't know, get sick and not show up to the polls, then that's a vote that wouldn't count that gets counted. You want to bank your votes for sure, but it's better to bank the votes from like the low propensity voters, and we've done that higher rates than they've done it in all of these states, which is the most important thing. Ben Q says, as a landlord, not raising rents for 4 years, but I'll have no choice. We need change. Love my tenants. Don't want to make life harder for them either. I don't know if that's a duplicate, but appreciate it. Kanye West says, way less Trump-Harris signs in Florida because it's not competitive. They're not going to be handing out those signs. But there is enthusiasm, I'm sure, in Florida. I've seen it myself. I've seen billboards when I was down there a couple months ago. Cab drivers, and all in for Trump, every single one. Jonathan Williams says something about the intelligence of the polymarket users when they freak out over a false poll. Also, what polls you think drop Monday? Maybe Quinnipiac, maybe another Marist, another like Reuters Ipsos poll, possibly. We'll see. Ragdoll MMA says, I bet 300 on Harris to profit, 525 to hedge. Well, I mean, people are using the markets. And I mean, the Seltzer poll is unique because people like just absolutely just die on this hill. It's always right. So when it comes up with something absurd, like Harris up in Iowa, of all states, which, by the way, the early vote is not looking good for the Democrats there. I'm not saying that early vote's indicative. It could swing left if Trump has a bad night. But Iowa, of all states, like, it's now down to like, it was like 73% Trump last night. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that's just free money, essentially. It's free money. Something would have to go very wrong for Iowa. Very wrong. For that poll to be in the ballpark of like 5. I'm just that confident that poll's not going to age well. Maybe I'm just delusional, but I don't think so. It just things like that and things like some of these narratives are just making people go crazy. But it's like, I don't think they play well with the median voter. I think they're more just demoralizing Trump voters more so than changing minds at this point. Because even if the undecideds broke 60 to 40 for Harris, you wouldn't even gain half a point. Think about that. There's just not that many of them. So the polls would have to be off in the other direction. Biaxal Flip says, a lot of us Canadians are nervously watching the election. The world can't afford a Kamala presidency. We really want a Trump win. CCM28 has successfully got my apolitical girlfriend to vote for Trump. Unfortunately, she still voted for Tester. I still think, it's a vote for Trump. Maybe, if she wasn't voting beforehand, you might have done a negative there. But I mean, a vote for Trump in the popular vote is a vote for Trump. He's not going to lose anyways, most likely. Jacob Hawley says, Directive 5240, page 13. That's the new military directive, violates I don't know what that is. But I want to make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I don't believe I did. I could be wrong. But I think we got everything. Should have gotten it all. But we'll be back on Tuesday night for sure. I don't know if we're going to do a stream tomorrow night in the midnight voting in New Hampshire. Probably not. It's like I only think they're doing like one of those locations. It doesn't really tell us much. But we'll drop the predictions tomorrow, both of them. We'll do a down ballot one first, and then a few hours later, we're going to do the presidential, so it should be fun. But what can I say? Anyways, Tuesday is going to be huge. Everybody should be here. Make sure you mark your calendars. We'll be streaming probably for like 12 hours maybe. I don't know. Probably not that long, but it is going to be the most comprehensive election coverage that people will find just anywhere. And that's what's important about it. Because very few, I mean, you have people that are good. I'm not saying that you don't, but like the mainstream media, a lot of them don't even know how these electoral dynamics play out the way that we've been. I've been doing this for 8 years, even before I had my channel. I've been doing the election stuff, monitoring all this, and it's definitely been a ride. So hopefully Trump can finish the comeback story of a lifetime, because that's essentially what it would be if he goes out there and wins. But it's not a done deal. Jonathan Williams says, take Monday night off and prep for Tuesday. Probably. It'd be good. Be good to do that. DS Cuber says, I worry about the cannibalization theory, because whether the early vote is 30% or 10%, it doesn't mean we expand our field. It's only false if the early vote is filled with, well, we're doing the low prop more. We have more juice in the tank in North Carolina. I think in Georgia they probably do, but a lot of those voters are not high propensity that they have, and usually election day is not going to be that favorable to them. But we'll watch. It's not a done deal, which is why people need to get off the couch, get off their fat ass and go to the polls, right? That's what Trump said. He's right. Get everyone else to do that too. So we don't want anybody sitting this out. It's very important. Very important. David Meyer for 50. This might be the last super chat of the night. Okay, we have more of them. Minnesota voter here with 3 daughters voting for the first time. My wife and I did our duty, voted early, even though the state is probably hopeless. Please, my Wisconsin brothers, vote for Trump. Well, you never know. Just because I think Trump probably is not going to win Minnesota doesn't mean that he can't find a way to do it if he gets a surge out of nowhere. So we need to fight for every vote we can everywhere. But the priority for me is mainly in those big 7 swing states, because Trump isn't getting below 219. And, even if 312 is the ceiling, if he gets 270, he's home. So Jacob Hawley says the Posse Comitatus Act is a federal law that limits powers of the federal government in use of the military personnel to enforce domestic policies within the U.S. Interesting. Now, I will say this about Fox in Arizona, as someone put in chat. There's a chance that if they know Trump's going to win it, they're going to call it early for Trump. And if they know Trump's going to win, because they're going to try to get back in the good graces so they can do their pro-Trump shtick for 4 more years. It's just like they did when he was in office, even though a lot of it was for show. Not everybody at Fox, but a lot of people. They're going to do what they can do to make a profit. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So DH1399 says, what are the chances in 48 hours we're talking about broken water pipes, cardboard on windows? Well, here's the deal. They're counting the votes, the mail-in votes early, and they're canvassing them now in Georgia, which is a very, very good sign. So that's good. Dova Budgie says, how does the vote cannibalism work? Well, let's say somebody votes on election day usually, and they vote early, and it shows up in the early vote statistic as Republicans are doing 1 vote better. That's technically a cannibalized vote. It's like, rearranging the chairs on the deck. You're not actually adding to it. So it's not a perfect theory, though. Obviously, it's not perfect. Despair for 5 says, I think people are blowing slow counting out of proportions. Oh, probably. I think so. Depending on the state, like Arizona and Nevada are going to be painful, but we're probably going to have enough intel. We've ran enough numbers. We have enough models to kind of know what the ballpark estimate's going to be, and we're going to go from there. So that's pretty much it, guys. We're going to end the show. We got another super chat. CCM28 says, was in Charlotte this weekend. The Trump ads were so much better than the Harris ones. My generic Republican parents even said they were great. Well, absolutely. I mean, the Trump ads during the football game today were pretty good. They're pretty good. And it's, Lions, Packers, that is two key swing states going up against each other. So that's a good way to have those targeted ads. But yeah, the Trump campaign, they've been doing a pretty good job overall, I would say. So anyways, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. It's been a great show. We'll be back eventually. We'll be back in just a couple days, but tomorrow we'll be putting out both predictions here. So I will see you guys in the next one. Like the stream, subscribe, hit the bell. I'll see you guys next time. Red Eagle, out.